order the Board of Education Liaison Committee of the Stratford Town Council. And before we start, I'd like to have a moment of silence. We've had quite a few passings in the past 6 months, including Ray O'Connell, Irene Cornish, Jay Wahlberg, and many others we know. And I can't forget Karen's dad, who I knew very well, Don Schuler. So let's have a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen, I knew your dad very well from long since I was a teenager. He was a great guy. I really liked him.
Thank you so much, Bill.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the minutes of February 19th, 2020?
This is Laura Dancho. I'll motion to approve.
This is Allison Delbenny. I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Okay, current, let's see, do we need to go through, maybe Mario, you can answer. Do we need to go through who's here, or is it, I know it shows on the screen and everything, but do we need to have everybody read off their names?
No, you don't need to, but what they require.
Oh, you broke up there.
Yeah, what they require is that before each person speaks and every time a person speaks, that you identify yourself and your title if you have one.
Okay, thank you.
And the written minutes will show the quorum and who was in attendance.
Thanks, Margot. Okay, so this is Bill O'Brien speaking. I forgot to mention that at the beginning. But Janet, would you want to do a current budget update, or does somebody from the board want to talk about that from the elected board?
Do you want to talk about that, Allison?
Well, we can talk about how at our last meeting, this is Allison Delbenny speaking, board chair. At our last meeting, there was a projected, I believe, $873,000 rollover that we had. I had spoken to the mayor and Chris about setting up an account to roll that over for next year. We're waiting really until our board meeting Monday to see if any other expenses have come up and what the actual cost of electricity and all those bills, because there were just projections at that point. So I don't know if there's an updated number in terms of those utilities or anything like that at this point, but that was the last number that we were given. That's, if you want to piggyback, Dr. Robinson.
Sure. Yes, thank you, Allison. This is Janet Robinson, superintendent. Yes, I don't have what the figure will be just yet, but we've really been trying to monitor it and see where we can go with that. But Bill, we anticipate that whatever's left over, and it could be 300,000 or it could be 600,000. We're just not sure right now. But by next Monday, we'll be closer to June 30th, and that just gives us more. So as we also have 187,000 in reimbursement for COVID expenses that will also get rolled into that same non-reoccurring account. So that will help us with our cuts we're trying to make for next year's budget.
Well, this is Bill O'Brien again. Wanted to thank you for sending out the Finance Committee minutes for the last 3 meetings. That's very helpful. And then there's also federal money we expect, right?
Yes, we, as a matter of fact, I just saw at 5 o'clock tonight, I received a message that there will be a posting on Friday of how to apply for the federal CARES money. And so we'll do that immediately. And our expectations is that should come into the district 1st of July. And that will be 990,000, with some of that going to the private schools also. And that will that will help us because we, as you probably know, we donated all our PPE out of our nurses' rooms and we donated all of our thermometers. We have literally nothing left. So, so we have to seek all sources to replenish that supply and also purchase additional supply because we're going to have to, if we're back in school, we will have to have extra masks and supply masks for all staff too, staff and students. So we have quite a lot to plan for when we figure out whether we're going to be back in school or not.
Well, I wanted to compliment the Finance Committee for the hours and hours you spent the last few weeks, because I listened to a lot of it, and you spent a lot of time fighting through this. But other committee members have any questions? Laura Dancho?
Yeah. Hi, this is Laura Dancho, and I have just a couple of questions. I also want to commend the Finance Committee for the days and hours of work that you're spending trying to get this budget to work. So I just wanted to point out the history of kind of what the council's done since I've been a counselor anyway. It seems since 2017, in general, the Board of Ed's budget increases have been around 2.2, 2.6, 2.5%. I think there was one year I remember where we gave you 100% of what you asked for. I think that was 111.8 million is one that resonates with me because I remember it was one of the first ones we did. So when you came to your request, which was $120 million, which was over 5% increase. Why? I'm just looking for why so extreme this year. What has happened where now all of a sudden that increase is so exorbitant and way over any percentage, which you probably had to realize we weren't going to be able to give you 5%.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So what is it that's happening that we need to think about in order to make the Board of Ed make this work for everyone?
Yes. Really good question, Laura. I'll back up just a little bit with a little history. February of this past year, we began to see a surprising, an unusual increase in special ed, and actually what really hit us was there was a 2-week period where 10 special ed kids moved in. A few of those were outplaced kids that had already been outplaced, and we had to assume the cost. We very quickly came to realize that if this continued, the rates that we were going, we were looking at a deficit. We were going to have to come back to the council and say, hey, we're in the red because of our special ed costs. We went out on COVID-19 in March 11th, actually, was our first time out with Wilcoxon. And unbelievably, as we were out and out and out, if there's a silver lining on COVID-19, it's that it helped compensate for the deficit in spending we thought we would have. So had we not gone out and shut everything down, we would have had to come to you and say, our special ed costs are just overwhelming. I read in the paper that Trumbull had a $2 million, which is exactly what we had, a $2 million overage in their special ed. So that overage carries over to next year's budget. And so it is really about our special ed costs.
So you're seeing a higher, I'm sorry, that's kids.
And we love the sounds of kids.
We're seeing more students with special ed needs, or have the special ed needs sort of in like the conditions for special ed have increased?
Costs have increased. We're seeing more students with more needs. Mm-hmm. And frankly, a lot of these students are moving in. They're I
think because we have a good reputation for taking care of special ed needs. I think I have a good reputation for that.
We have several foster homes in town. So I know just working from home, I get the 603s that DCF prepares and lets us know that these children are now within our district. I've gotten numerous ones just in the last month, and every single one of them is listed as a special needs student. So that's another factor that occurs.
Okay, I have this book that you gave us the last time. Can you tell me like where the special ed categories are in here? Because it's quite
Laura, I'm looking for my book right now. As to where she is.
I mean, that's okay. I had that question, and then I'm assuming that you're cutting $3 million from your original ask from what the council has approved. Is that because your ask was 120 million, and then you came to us with 3.49%, which is 118 million. So I'm wondering why you're trying to cut $3 million and not the 1.023 million.
What we are down to the point where we're cutting.
So you're not cutting from your original ask of 3.49% that you came to us with. You're cutting from your original budget of 120 million, which was 5.75.
Laura, this is Allison Del Bene. I'm just gonna, if you don't mind, Dr. Robinson, when we had gotten to the 3.49%, we didn't vote on any cuts at that point.
So
there was a lot of discussion about things that we could cut to get to that number, but we didn't vote on anything. So then when it came back from council, we said, okay, now, because we didn't want to start voting on things when we knew there was a possibility of having it even less. So we didn't want to nitpick to get it down to a certain number to then have to go back and nitpick more.
So the 3.49 ask was just like a best guess? Is that what it is?
It was a lot of discussion about things that we could cut to get to 3.49 without actually cutting them.
Okay, so you have a preliminary list to get to the 3.49, and then you're trying to get down to the what did we give you, 2.5? I can't remember anymore.
7, I think.
2.6%.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have contractual obligations, and then I saw that you had a lot of programs in your minutes that you were cutting math programs, reading programs. I'm just wondering, are those extra programs something you like a wish list kind of thing, or are these things that are already existing that will no longer exist?
They're both. This is Janet Robinson speaking. There are both. You'll see in there many things that, especially in professional development and so forth, that we wanted to implement. Some of the programs, though, are things that were in place already, and we're cutting back on those or trying to find other resources that would not be as expensive.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm assuming this is still a work in progress, and I know that the finance committee is meeting again.
Yes, we're meeting Monday night, and then the board meeting will follow that.
This is Allison Del Bene talking, board chair. We're hoping, Laura, that we won't have to make any more cuts. So, with the projected money that we are rolling over, we'd like to keep it as is. So that was really the drive behind not doing anything or really getting down to that number, because we thought, why cut things if we don't have to?
Right, no, exactly. And so right now I remember when I first looked at what Teresa sent, you had about 1.1 million left, and now it looks like you're down to 873 with more bills coming in before the end of this month, is what I understand, correct? So if you say there's like $200,000, you would just go, where would that go?
Well, we would just apply it towards the current the budget for 2021. Trying to think of the years. We would just use it towards whatever line items that aren't being paid for yet.
would that include hiring of the teachers? I know that you had 2 teachers on the list for Stratford High School, and would
Correct,
that,
those were not cut yet. So
Okay.
as currently, now, like I said, we don't, that's with, if we're getting 873. So,
but that's not going to happen. You already know that because you're going to have more bills.
well, those were projected costs. We're really not sure. Like those are for the utilities and things. We're hoping it's less. For
And then
me,
the
anyway, I'm hoping it's less.
The 187 million for the reimbursement, the COVID reimbursement, that's from the state, I'm assuming, and that would go to replenish the supplies in the nurses' offices, as well as buy PPE for students.
That could actually, that 187 is out of this year's operating budget. It's a reimbursement for this year's operating budget, so it can go into the rollover account with what this year. So it'll be the CARES money that we're looking to replenish, to do the PPE and so forth with.
And could the 990, could that also go towards technology for the students to supplement at-home learning? That would be a category that you could use that 990 for.
That's correct. You can use it for social emotional learning, for technology, for supplemental or remedial programs for children who have missed out, or for any safety supplies.
So I don't have any more budget questions, but I do have questions on another topic if anyone else wants to talk about budget.
So Bill O'Brien again, I would think with the rollover money and the COVID money, there's reason for optimism. But I'm an optimistic guy.
I don't know I'm not sure about the rollover money, if that's going to be a done deal or not, but if so, that'd be great.
Bill, it's Greg Cand, once you guys are ready.
Didn't know you were there. Thanks, Greg. Go ahead, Greg.
Two sets of questions. First, building on Laura's comments, is the Board of Ed going to manage next year's budget to the amount approved by the town council? Are you going to manage it to the amount approved plus the carryover from this year plus any federal monies? And I'm thinking that next year, you're allowing yourself like that much more expenditures this year that's not in what we'll call your baseline funding for 2021, and which may not be there for 2022.
Yeah, Greg, I'm not sure I totally understand your question, and I don't want to give you an answer that isn't meeting your question. So let me try. This is Janet Robinson, superintendent. So let me try to say the COVID money. I don't know if that's coming out of mine or where it's coming from, but the COVID money, which is the reimbursement that came out of this year's operating budget, which is $187,000. That goes into the rollover of what's left from this current year. The $990,000 cannot supplant operating money. That is a separate grant, and it's supposed to be spent for expenses around dealing with the COVID crisis.
I think that answered Greg's question, right? The 990 is not being used to increase the Board of Ed budget in any way because it's a grant that's specific for this year.
My next question may help explain. Let's think of the Board of Ed revenues, or the Board of Ed budget, and right now it just reflects the revenue that's approved by the town. But that revenue that's approved by the town is going to be supplemented by the excess funds that are available from this year. And it's also going to be supplemented by other sources of revenue, which would include, say, rent paid by IPPI, or reimbursement for custodial expenses from the rec department, reimbursement for custodial from Sterling House, and maybe there's some reoccurring grants that are rather stable that you can count on year after year after year. So in a larger question, I was hoping that the Board of Ed could produce a full picture of its revenue that includes all sources of revenue, not just the town's revenue, so that we could see what its full pool of available money is that could be spent by the Board of Ed during the course of the fiscal year. Can the Finance Department produce a projected revenue for custodial reimbursements, for IPPI, for any carryover from prior year, such as we're going to put forward to the town council soon, in addition to the allotment that the town council approved?
Karen, I see your hand raised. Do you want to reply?
I think that Greg is a little misdirected, possibly, or confused. A lot of the money that the board gets is funneled right through the town. So the town has those records for, I mean, it goes through the town. Isn't that correct, Janet? That it goes through the town, much of the anything that comes to us, say it's a Medicaid reimbursement, or it goes to the town general fund, and then it's supposed to become part of us at the end of the year or beginning of the year. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, there are a number of sources. Greg, we did produce a document that was handed out at a finance meeting of all the grants that the district receives. So those grant dollars are what you, I think, were referring to in terms of what are stable grants each month. So that document exists. It was, it may even be posted on our website, but if not, we can certainly get it to you. The IPPI, the contract which we discussed, that was discussed at a previous meeting, and there's a lot of scratching going on, a lot of interference, and so probably it's a good idea when we're not actively engaged to go into mute. Any rate, we did put out the arrangement with IPPI. It isn't a direct money to us. It's a balancing of credit for our kids. So that's available. That's a document you can see. And what was the other thing I was thinking of? And there are no other funds from previous years that have been rolled over. So the only funds that are rolling over for the first time are this year's funds. So that's going into account with the town, along with the reimbursement for the expenditures we've had on COVID. And we can't intermingle the funds of that versus with the CARES dollars.
In a conversation that Bill and I had with Dawn Savo, the town finance director, she confirmed that when money is received by the town, and I don't want to say all money, but you know, it may not be the Medicaid money Karen referred to, but it at least includes the Recreation Department money, for example. It is credited to BOE's account. So if BOE has a balance of $90 million and the town pays a $20,000 bill, well, receives an invoice from the BOE through the rec department, it deposits that $20,000 into the BOE account. So now you have 90 million plus 200,000. And supposedly the rec department money goes directly to you, but you know, I won't disagree with Karen that other funds that are intended for BOE may go to the town and may or may not get credited to the BOE. So the town finance believes that it is crediting the BOE for all money due to the BOE. So the BOE available balance always reflects money that was owed to BOE, whether it's from, I'll say, maybe Medicaid, Medicare, whoever, the rec department, and that other bills are paid directly to the BOE, such as from Sterling House. And it's those deposits to the BOE bank account, if you will, that serve as additional revenue to the BOE, an additional source of money you can draw on to pay expenses. And if there is money that, yeah, I mean, that was not true 10 years ago, but that has been true for the last 4 operating years, at least, according to Dawn. So given that the town's taking some due diligence to reimburse BOE for the invoices that it sends to the town, and that the town is depositing, if you will, money that is passing through the town but is intended for BOE, that the BOE Finance Department generates those invoices. The BOE Finance Department is aware of those deposits. So it could be itemized and then summarized so that the full annual budget for the BOE could project its revenues, not merely as what the town approved, but also including the grants that you referred to, Janet, and the reimbursements that the town is passing through and depositing in the BOE account. And it's that summarization, that accounting that may be helpful to give a proper reflection. Then if there's a gap, for example, if Medicare is providing money passing through the town to the BOE for example, Medicare, that if BOE is not getting that money, then it can put in that request and say, hey, Medicare said that they sent us this money and it's not town money, pass it over. And if it's not passed over, then this would be a great forum to have that discussion. But with the acknowledgement that much money that is invoiced by BOE is actually deposited with BOE, whether it's directly to the BOE by, say, Sterling House or through the town, from the town rec department, and then to the BOE account. I mean, it may not be substantial, but it would provide a fuller accounting of the revenues that BOE has available on an annual basis to subsidize its expenses.
Oh, just so I understand, let me just ask a clarifying question. So custodian works overtime tonight, and the custodians, and that is billed to a town office. We bill the town for that overtime, which was not in our budget, and that gets credited back to our to pay the expense of that custodian. Are we talking about the same thing?
I hope so, because we first will acknowledge that BOE is invoicing the town for overtime, and that the town is reimbursing the BOE for that expense. And you know, one justification for, let's call it the custodial increase in costs, if custodial costs have gone up, theoretically, let's say 6% a year, but the contract is only 3% a year, then the explanation is we have more overtime than we expected. But if that overtime time was offset because BOE is invoicing the town and the town is reimbursing BOE, then it'd be good to see that revenue an offset to the increased custodial expense.
I think John can probably supply you with that because there's nothing that's invoiced that hasn't already been an expense on our side.
Well, but Don doesn't have all control. Other items such as house, as an example, paid directly to the BOE. So the summary of reimbursement, you know, BOE issues 10 invoices, maybe they total $50,000. Most entities will track their invoices and them as paid, and then do their accounting, you know, as take that receivable and turn it into cash. So the single accurate source is the finance department of BOE for all of its invoices, whether those invoices were paid by the town or Sterling House or whoever. So it would be BOE Finance that would be the best source to collate that various revenue sources, whether it's a special payment Medicare that was received that's recognized cash, or whether it was a special payment for Medicare that was paid to the town and not yet received. So it remains an outstanding receipt.
Right, thanks, Greg and Janet. I think this is something in the coming year we'll work more closely with Dawn and the Board of Ed to understand. I've had questions myself about the billing for custodians for like Sterling House and other, but we'll work it out and we'll keep talking about it. I'd like to go on to the superintendent's report if Janet has anything to add in addition to the budget.
Thanks, Bill. You know, as you know, we have been doing distance learning since March 15th or so. We were in the first districts to really move into that right away. Our teachers did a phenomenal job. Our counselors, everybody pitched in, and we have to take hats off to all of them. Now we are trying to anticipate graduation, what that looks like, and graduation for both high schools will be next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday from 3 to 7 in groups of 15 students at a time with their parents. So it'll be lengthy. And thanks to our mayor, who brought up this idea of having banners with each graduate's picture on it hung on the light posts around town, they will also be celebrated in that way. And so we have, you know, we're trying to help those students put some closure on the year. They unfortunately didn't get to have a senior prom. They didn't get to have a lot of the events that other classes had, but they are resilient and they will do well. We've been trying to, we did this fall, I mean, the spring for next fall, in terms of what if we're out on distance learning again. So we've had committees and some of the board members, we've had stakeholders from all over town participating. We've had over 90 people that have been working diligently on different aspects of coming back to school, what that might look like. If we come back in the fall, what would that look like? What are the configurations? There's a lot of options in terms of coming back and a lot of restrictions. Second, what if we don't come back? We go back to distance learning again. What did we learn that we can make this better then? And thirdly, what if we start and then there's a surge and we have to go out again? So everybody's been working very hard on that. They're coming to finish, and hopefully the administrative team will be able to put together a booklet that is Stratford's plan that will give us some plans that we can refer to depending on what decision the state makes in terms of where we are. But it's going to be the kinds of plans they're talking about bring a lot of extra expense. They're talking about only 10 kids per classroom with 6 feet between them. If you put 6 feet between students, separate students by 6 feet on a 60-passenger bus. That's about 6 kids. So increases bus costs. So, and also if you're only going to have 10 kids in a classroom, you don't have a lot of space. Are you going to split sessions? Are you going to have to spread kids out? So they've had a number of different alternatives that have been put together to look at, and with the expenses and what we're going to need to deal with. So we're waiting for some clue from our commissioner and our governor as to what they're looking at. I listened to the governor's conversation at 5 o'clock. He had an invited phone call this afternoon, and he said the next thing, as after this phase 2 kicked in today, his next thing he's looking at is what will happen with schools. He said that if the projections stay as the trends are right now, there's much more possibility of starting school in the bricks and mortar. If there's a switch in the trend, then we will have to go back. So I think what happens with phase 2 right now in terms of the state and what happens with the spread of the virus is going to determine what happens for us next fall, and that's very important to us. So that's what's on our minds.
All right, Janet, this is Bill O'Brien. I hate to even mention this, but what's the plan next week if the weather's bad any of those nights?
The group is small enough that they would be able to move into the gym. But it's not going to rain.
So this is Laura Dancho. Graduation's going to be in person then, in person?
Yes, but maintaining the distance, that they must maintain the small group. And then we have the same person who videos our board meetings is going to, with some assistance, be videotaping these, put the whole thing together then in one montage, one thing for them. So they'll all see all of their friends, all of their classmates together.
Nice. Very nice.
All right, thank you, Janet. Why don't we move on to the next agenda item, the memorandum of understanding for school security and for flood pool. I don't have any details on the school security MOU.
This is Allison Delbeni, board chair. I just wanted to say that first, the mayor had sent over the job description for us to look at and review and add to. She told us that there's everything on the town side that's necessary, so it's anything that we want to add or detail, and we should be having a vote at our meeting on Monday to accept it. And I also want to say thank you, obviously, to the town for sharing this resource with us. And then just to touch on flood pool, also, we had Janet, Laura, and Chris Pia all we had a Zoom call, I don't remember what date it was, a few days ago, to talk about the logistics of how that would happen. And an MOU has not been written yet for that, but then the same process will happen. I'm assuming that it'll be sent to us to review. And again, I wanted to say thank you. It's a great start to collaborating our resources. So.
Thanks, Allison. I was going to say that too. To me, it seems like there's a lot better collaboration past couple of years than we had seen in the past, and I have to give credit to this new board for a lot of that. Thank you.
I just had a question on the school security. So this is Laura Dancho speaking. This would encompass all of the elementary school SROs. Is that what this is for? Or is this for the director, the security director?
This is Janet Robinson, superintendent. This is more a director for that, to oversee all of our security.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's something we've been asking for a long time, and I think it's going to be a very busy person, just doing an assessment of all of our schools, seeing that all the security measures are in place, that people are following those security measures. And so I think this is really going to be an important position.
So I have another question that kind of builds off of that, and it's a question of school capacity. How is the enrollment in our schools? Do we have room for new, like, our high schools, are they full, mostly full? Our elementary schools, middle schools?
They vary. They vary, but mostly full would be the general response I would give you. When Stratford High School is completed, it will be over the projections. So that what we could see that coming though as they came up through the elementary grades and they've hit the high school. Last year's 9th grade was one of our biggest. And I think we retained students that often go to other high schools. We had move-ins, we had our own students, so it was a shock for us because we didn't predict that much of an increase. We knew that we'd have an increase, but it was bigger than we expected. So we're looking at our kindergarten enrollment. It's not huge, it's about right where it normally is, but I think the COVID has kind of slowed the progress of people registering for kindergarten. Plus, we always get the bulk of our kindergartners in August. So we're watching that carefully to see what that looks like. We have a school planning committee that is looking to do a study of our schools and to do some long-range planning. We had a number of things in the works and conversations when everything just came to a halt. So I'm sure they'll get back into that. And they sent to the board, which the board approved, a study to be done by Malone McBroom, which actually has changed names, but to do a study of our facilities and give us some idea what we could be thinking about for long range.
With Stratford High School being at capacity or slightly over from what you just said, is that the reason for hiring two teachers there? When I saw that the 2 teacher hires for Stratford High School, is that for that reason, or is that because of the 25 credit?
It's the 25 credits.
25 credit.
Yeah.
And Janet, this is Bill O'Brien. How is Bunnell doing as far as their capacity?
They're pretty full. They're pretty full. I think that you know, it's one of the things that will have to be looked at with this school planning is to try to take a long-term look at this population. We are not one of the school districts in Connecticut that is losing enrollment. We are either maintaining, we go up and down, but we are typically not, we cannot say that we're losing any enrollment, which is unusual in suburban school systems. So what we have to look at is where are they located and what schools they're going to, and I think Bunnell is going to have to be part of that study to see what their capacity is going to be in the future.
Karen?
Can I ask a question, Bill?
Karen,
Thank
Karen,
you, Bill. Yeah, thank you, Bill. One of the things that all the departments in the town need to pay attention to is when they're building housing, like the apartment building down by Christ Church with 100 units or approximately 100 units, you know, that's potential students coming into the system. And we need to keep that in mind when those projects are being, you know, looked at or approved or modified or whatever they're going to be done with them. But when you increase the housing, I get wanting the properties on the tax rolls and et cetera. I totally understand that, but the offset in the costs sometimes for the type of housing that is coming in is not worth it. And so it's hard because if you have, I mean, look at the density projects that you have along Ferry Boulevard. You know, you have the one that's built, the one that's proposed, and now you have this other one. I mean, it's a lot of housing, which is good, but there is also a cost involved. So we just have to keep that in our minds when we're looking at projects. So I just wanted to just let you know, remind you that those are things that are coming down the pike.
Don't even sign.
Well,
Thank
Phil
you.
O'Brien again. Thankfully, many of these apartments in the, I guess, what's it called? The TOD? I can't think of what it's called. Are studio and one bedroom, the great majority of them, thank goodness. That should keep the population down, but those, I know what you mean about the 2 bedrooms.
Mhm. But even the 1 bedroom, you know, you have 1 bedroom and then pull out couches. I mean, it's, you have to be just cognizant of, we just have to be careful, you know? And especially thinking about the COVID crisis that we're facing now, one of the things that they have found through various studies is that high density housing is a petri dish for things like COVID, which is why people are running out of New York and Chicago. They're buying up housing in the suburbs because they need the space. So, you know, I just wanted you to be cognizant of the potential of more students coming in, that, you know, we wouldn't have a control over their ages or their placement or whether they have special needs. I mean, we don't have any control over that. So we just have to be cognizant of that when we're planning development. You know, it's all interconnected. I mean, we all know that, but thank you.
Bill, Greg Can.
Okay, go ahead, Greg.
Thank you, sir. Question, I think, for Janet Robinson. I'm thinking about the overall enrollment trend since she started with Stratford. You know, 8 years ago, we may have had, excuse the round numbers, 700 more students in all grades than we have today. And at that time, we were not using Center School. We were not using Honey Spot. Was classroom size much bigger 8 years ago to accommodate those 700 extra students? Or which dynamic is giving us concerns today that we didn't have when our census was much higher?
Well, part of what you also have to include, Greg, because they could come back at any time, are the number of students that are at Fairchild Wheeler, at 6 to 6 Magnet School, at the Magnet Schools in New Haven. When a Catholic school closes down, we get a bulk of kids coming in. So all the kids that live in Stratford could at any time decide to return to public schools. So we do have old schools, some of them like Wilcoxon with very small classrooms. So we have some issues that we have to take. That's why we're going to do a study of our schools and what the projected enrollment is in the future.
Well, I was just thinking too about why our student population is going up. Is we used to have a reputation as having one of the biggest senior populations in the state, and now many families are moving here from down county and from New York and buying those homes because they're very affordable to those people coming from a much more expensive area. Okay, I want to talk about the DBS consolidation with the town.
Did you want to talk about the flood pool at all, or did we do that?
Yeah, I think we did. Allison touched on that.
So DBS does energy conservation for the town, also does energy conservation for the school district, and has saved us all the taxpayers in this town a great deal of money over the years. So we have been talking to them about other things that might take place that would help save money, and especially since they have the contracts with both of our, you know, on the school side. Allison, I don't know if you want to go any further with that.
It was just something else that we were thinking about for sharing resources in terms of money savings as well, since they have a contract with both us and you. If you if everyone would be on board for that and looking into it. Just a discussion point.
That makes sense.
So, Bill, this is Amy Wiltsey,
Hey,
Vice
Amy.
Chair of the Board. How are you? Just to touch on that a little bit, Susan did state at our last meeting that our contract does not expire until November. So although it's a conversation, it's an early conversation. So nothing can happen now, but it will be something that we look at in the fall. And it would possibly bring additional savings to the town, but definite savings to the board.
We like that. Okay, moving on to the Stratford High renovation project. I don't think Alan's with us tonight, is he?
I don't see him.
No, I don't see his name listed either. I do know there was some discussion about the new field that's going to be in. I guess which will be for practice only and will be for gym classes. And we're happy to say there'll be the Stratford High logo on that field. Because that brings me to the Bunnell High School field. I hope everybody's seen it or seen pictures of it. It's looking great. And I think by Thanksgiving, they predict the baseball field will be done. So some good stuff happening.
Bill, this is Janet Robinson. Just one statement. Because the students have not been in school, they have been able to do a lot of work on their timeline as opposed to our timeline, and because the things are connected. So the progress of the project is going very well.
And also, I think they're catching up on a lot of the back work orders while schools have been closed. So that's a good thing. So there are some good things coming out of this nightmare. Okay, I think somebody had their hand raised, but was it Karen?
Nope,
No?
but thank you.
Okay. I guess going on to old business, new business. Can somebody talk about the athletic review board? Does Bob chair that? Does it meet on a regular basis?
I don't think it meets regularly. It's hard for the athletic directors to have the availability for a time, but they do meet, and he's the chair.
I had some questions.
Laura Dancha.
So regarding that, I saw that some of the cuts were for the coaches, and some of the cuts involved math coaches as well. And I was just wondering that should you get this rollover money and the 187, what would be a priority for you as a board to put back into the budget that may have been already cut? Would you put the teachers back in? Would you put the coaches back in? Would you put the math coaches back in? Like, what would be the priority for you as a board?
Allison Del Bene, I'm happy to answer this question, and I'm just doing this based on a sense of the board. We really haven't talked what the priorities would be. That's not a discussion that's come up. However, it has come up of reinstating math coaches. So in my opinion, it's my view that that's a top priority to reinstate over anything else. So
I would think anything, right? And then also, like load. And are you going to a block schedule in order to accommodate the 25 credits?
there was a schedule change. Yep, we approved the schedule change for this coming fall. It's rotate 8, drop 2. So it's not a block, it's like a modified block schedule.
Okay. And then would teachers teach more, or would they still have their same standard load of teaching? Like how does that affect the teacher's load?
Well, based on the teacher's contract, we can't increase the number of sections that they teach. So I think it's more us trying to, I think it's more of a scheduling thing, course offerings in different periods. I think we have 3 new teachers right now that we're including next year, 2 Stratford High, 1 Bunnell, if I'm right. to help with the scheduling change. So, can't remember things now. I'm like 2-1, but yeah.
And Laura, this is Amy Wiltsey. If I can just answer the coaches, that was not an elimination of coaches. It was a reduction in the increase that they were requesting. So there's been no coach elimination, just budgetarily, they did not get the full increase that they requested for the next year.
And then what about the athletic coaches?
That's what I'm talking about, the athletic coaches.
So the athletic coaches and the math coaches would be unchanged, really, is what you're saying, because.
No, all
Right now we didn't.
All I was clarifying was that we did not vote to eliminate coaches per se. We just voted to eliminate the increase in the budget that they requested for next year. The math coaches, that was a vote, and as Allison stated, a high priority of our board.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other old or new business? Any other business? Oh, thank you. I guess we could have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Karen Roddia.
Who seconded that?
Amy Wiltsey.
Thank you. Thank you all in favor?
Thanks, everyone.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everybody.